Story 1. There are major things you need to be on the same page about, and if you are not, do not overlook them because the person meets all the other criteria. You do not have to be the same. You just have to have the discussion and come to an agreement that works for both of you. Finance, sex, children, relationships change over time. It is important to sit down every 6 months or so and review these topics to see if you are still in agreement. Story 2. I sometimes regret not traveling more as a single man. It is much harder to coordinate 2 or 3 people to be away for 2 weeks, plus make arrangements for pets. When it was just me in a studio apartment, the hardest part was deciding what to throw out from the fridge before I left versus what might be okay to keep. Story 3. After getting married, I regretted the lack of intimacy. In all seriousness, this might not help you, but for others, before you get married, discuss 3 things. 1. Do you both want children? Are you both genuinely excited about having children? What are the top things you both want out of life? For example, saving money and retiring early, living for the moment, or vacations. Are you both comfortable leaving your area? Or is it important to stay close to family? If you love someone, I understand you might think you will work it out, and you might, but you will do both of you a huge favor by at least having that discussion. If you don't, there will be resentment. Story 4. Make sure you have mutual goals. Important conversations include children, finances, and parents. All these topics should be addressed with realistic expectations. Story 5. Every time I had a regret or thought that maybe we were done, things got better with communication, work, and time. No regrets in the long term. Still married over 20 years. Story 6. Make sure you are comfortable having honest conversations about children, finances, and life goals. The person you are going to marry should make you feel like the best version of yourself when you are with them. Story 7. Don't keep a silent running score of things. Number of times you do something versus number of times your partner does the same. Chores. Initiates intimacy. Cleans. Pays the bill. Picks up the children. Whatever. It leads to resentment. If it bothers you, whatever it is, talk it out. Story 8. Not something I regret since I did not do that. My whole wedding must have cost about $300. I have a family member who spent around $6,000 and another who had a wedding of around $30,000. We all felt the same thing afterwards. We just signed a piece of paper and it did not change much. If I had paid those amounts for the feeling I got, I would have regretted it. I would have had to convince myself that it was somehow worth it. Story 9. I don't regret anything about my marriage. I married well. She's a great wife and mother. It is important to take care of both her needs and your own. Keep the romance alive and be supportive, but don't forget to maintain your hobbies and exercise. You have to create time for yourself, especially after children are in the picture. Story 10. Divorced and remarried. My second marriage is blissful, the love of my life. I believe this happened because, over the last 20 years, I have become more self-aware. My first wife was a good woman, but we were fundamentally incompatible. Get to know yourself and understand that who you are in your 20s will not be the same person in your 40s. This goes for your spouse too. Story 11. My only regret is not marrying her sooner. I feel like I won the lottery. She may be the greatest woman in the world. Story 12. Divorced. I wish I had more conversations about family planning and took a deeper look at her mental health. Story 13. Opt for the king-size bed as early in the relationship as possible, even if you both technically fit in a queen-size bed. You will sleep much better. Story 14. Recently engaged for a few months. I realized I won't be able to go through with getting married. There was an obvious shift in her attitude and countless other issues too many to mention. One of the final things for me was a small disagreement about how she let the dog jump on the bed, ripping the sheets. She took her blanket and went downstairs to the couch. I went down, gently pulled the blanket and said, "Come on upstairs, let's lay down." She kicked me in the face and left for her mother's house. That was the first time someone put their hands on me, and I did not react. If it were the other way around, it would be a completely different story. Not to mention the totally different libido. For 3 years, it may have been 2 to 3 times a month and just a quick encounter. I communicated that I don't want you to just bend over the kitchen island. I would like to take you upstairs and focus on you with foreplay and other things. The brain is the biggest sex organ. I don't want it just for me because then I feel like I'm using her. In the very early stages, people may show you what they want, but as little things begin to come out, keep it in the back of your mind. If you see consistent patterns, there is a reason. Like a marathon runner can't sprint the whole time, so with a new relationship, slow and steady wins. Story 15. The day she stops wanting to have sex, check if it is just a temporary issue or a permanent change. Address it sooner rather than later. Story 16. Maintain your friendships. When marriage, careers, and children happen, we sometimes do not prioritize our social lives outside the marriage. Also, maintain your fitness routine, as the pounds can accumulate over the years. Story 17. I really wish that I had not followed the happy wife, happy life advice. The truth is, some people are never happy unless they are unhappy. I looked at each issue as, in the end, why am I getting upset and arguing? Is this the hill I want to die on? And I compromised what I wanted far too much. Sadly, my wife changed a lot after marriage and just kept pushing, and I kept giving in all the time. So, learn that it is okay to say no. My wife says it to me all the time, so why is it not okay for me? I am not saying be difficult and fight every issue because that is exhausting, but it is okay to stand up and say, no, this time we are doing it my way. If she reacts negatively, take my word and tell her you want to end the argument if it does not stop. Otherwise, you will do the mortgage thing, the kid thing, and then when you reach the empty nest phase, you will have regrets about all the things you could have done and tried. In short, do not live by happy wife, happy life. Instead, live by happy spouse, happy house. Story 18. Make sure you address all your trauma before entering a marriage. The same applies to your partner. Also, never be a chameleon. Pretending to be someone you are not to gain love never works. You can only maintain the act for so long. Story 19. Making sure you have the bedroom rules and needs clear from the beginning. We discussed all of the household rules but did not discuss sexual needs enough. Story 20. Don't marry the wrong woman. I met my first wife when she was 21. At the age of 19, she had a passionate relationship with a man from Germany. After a year, he disappeared, and she had no way to contact him. There was a lot of infatuation. She would enter a dreamy state when she heard certain German music. I mistakenly assumed she was over him and fell in love with her. Over time, it became clear I was her second choice, and we slowly grew tired of each other despite having 3 children. We both got jobs that kept us away from home a lot, and I think that was a relief for both of us. Make sure that when you marry, you are each other's first choice. Story 21. Married now for more than 20 years, and the only regret I have is not finding her when we were younger. Still crazy about her. She is the sexiest woman I know and remains my favorite romantic fantasy. Story 22. I believed her when she said she was fine and that we were okay. I also believed everyone telling us that with 3 young children, we were just in a tough time, that it would get better, and that we would make it because everyone saw that we loved and cared for one another. Going through a divorce now and never really trying to fix things is killing me. We made it through one couple session, and she hated it, saying she felt attacked. Yes, accountability feels like an attack when you do not want to own up to what you have done or who you are. Lesson learned painfully. Story 23. When they say your children will be grown and gone in the blink of an eye, they are not lying. It is very true. Enjoy the time with them. Story 24. No regrets, but it is important to understand that spending your life with someone will have its highs and lows. No matter how good you are together, there will be times when it is really difficult, you fall out of sync, and it takes work to find those resets that help you remember why you love each other. For us, travel has always helped us reconnect. My advice is to understand that love will not always look and feel the same as it did when you started out, and it takes a lot of work to sustain it. Things that can give you a good chance. Do not rush into marriage. Live together for a couple of years beforehand. Ensure you are aligned on children and home ownership. Story 25. Divorced. I regret marrying her, but I love the person I have become. She was a ball and chain. I grew stronger in many ways because of that. She is 40 and remains the broken teenager she was when we married. The children actively avoid her. Do not marry someone who thinks life will be better when something changes. That time will never come for them because they wait for outside influences to do the work required for personal happiness. Story 26. First wife. She changed drastically after she had a child. She became very verbally and sometimes physically violent. Then she was diagnosed with cancer. I tried taking her to chemotherapy, but she was violent every day. I thought the chemotherapy might help her rethink things and change. It did not. I divorced her. I tried to set healthy boundaries and support her, but she was so violent and unstable that it was impossible. That's how I knew it was over. The problem was that she did not tell me about the abuse she had experienced until after we were married. By then, it was too late. When people marry, they often feel comfortable enough to reveal all their emotional baggage, which can poison the relationship. My regret. My intuition was screaming, do not marry her. And so were my friend who had also dated her and my father. That was my mistake, but it was a learning experience. I used all my half of the house equity to pay for child support since child support was 25% of my net paycheck. I received no house equity from the divorce. I have studied relationship psychology and related fields for a long time and used this knowledge to choose another woman. Through a dating site, I carefully vetted potential partners. I eventually found a woman who was genuinely kind, even though she had dated some incompatible men. We are very compatible. We have been married for 10 years and are very happy now. Moral: 1. Use knowledge to carefully vet your prospective dates. Know how to recognize mental illness, which may interfere with a healthy partnership. Even anxiety can prevent people from communicating, and communication is the foundation of any relationship. No or poor communication equals no relationship. Understand the differences between men and women. In many ways, they are opposites. Finding and studying research on this helped me a lot. Note: studies discuss generalizations, and there are always exceptions to a generalization. Story 27. I don't regret being married at all. I'm happy with it, and it has been almost a decade now. However, what I do regret are the things I should have done before settling down. There are opportunities such as military service, wildland firefighting, and travel jobs that might be workable with a family. Some do manage it, but it is much harder and can lead to problems. Story 28. That I took care of my credit, health, and got a career job instead of getting overweight, having terrible credit, and wasting time working at a golf course with no benefits because it was easy. I also wish I had worked on my marriage better. It requires work and maintenance. I had the mindset that since we were married, the hard work was over. I wish I had been able to be honest with her and explain how things made me feel instead of bottling them up. We have a loving and great relationship, and I just wish I hadn't spent my mid-20s and early 30s treading water. It is important to note that it works both ways. You cannot be the only one putting in the effort. If you notice that, you need to speak up and be honest. If you cannot be honest with your loving wife, who else can you be honest with? As for the kids, she had a 3-year-old when we met. I regret convincing her to give him up for adoption, and then us having a little girl just a year later, just kidding about the adoption part. He calls me dad, and I love him. He is 21 and doing great. Our daughter is 16. Having children is not as difficult as people make it out to be. I'm glad we had our children fairly young. It taught us to be resourceful, and we learned a lot along the way. Now we are almost done with raising them, and we will be ready for grandchildren whenever they get here. Story 29. My wife and I talked at length about all the usual topics before we got engaged. Children, work, and intimacy. She committed to working full-time. She has a master's degree and could easily earn 6 figures. After we were married for about a year, she told me, I refuse to work. Now I am responsible for all the bills, including her very expensive student loans. I regret not divorcing her immediately. Now we have children, so unless I never want to see them, I am stuck. Get a prenuptial agreement. Story 30. Absolutely nothing. We have been together for 18 years, married for 10, and started dating in 10th grade. We have one child who is 9 years old. The three of us work perfectly together. Story 31. Married for over 25 years. I regret not discussing many things beforehand. We could have addressed the problems up front instead of waiting until they escalated and required immediate attention. I regret not talking in advance about our sexual desires. We have reached a place where we are both comfortable, but it took many emotional challenges to get there. I regret not taking premarital counseling seriously. I viewed it as an obstacle to overcome in order to get married, rather than as a tool to address the first two issues. In summary, communicate better. Story 32. Nothing, I would do it all again. Only when you lose someone after 32 years do you truly realize how much you love them. Telling someone not to take their partner for granted is just words. Experience hurts, but zero regrets. Stop holding back from your partner. Stop trying to protect yourself from relationship failure. Choose to go all in and just love them. They will do the same. Single and looking for an adventure partner. Story 33. I don't regret anything, but I would advise the boys. Get intimate a lot. Enjoy everything fully before getting committed. Make sure your future wife did the same. It will teach you what you actually want and especially what you don't want. This way, you avoid a midlife crisis, are happier, and won't divorce. Story 34. Marrying the wrong woman. I wish I could advise on how to pick the right one, as people change as they get older. All I can say is that choice is the difference between heaven and hell. Story 35. Should have done it sooner. I knew she was the one, but I was scared. I am still scared, but I always have someone to be scared with. Story 36. Divorced after she cheated on me. Make sure you are on the same page about money and spending. My ex did not seem like a big spender on the surface. She did not go for expensive things, but she would go to thrift stores or Target just for fun all the time. We constantly had plastic bags full of items lying around that never got used after being brought home. The fun for her was in the buying part, not the utility part. She was also a serial hobbyist. Not because she enjoyed doing the activities, but because it was a reason to buy a lot of things. At one point, she bought an expensive serger, a type of sewing machine. The machine never left the box it came in. Probably still has not. The one thing I immediately noticed after the divorce was suddenly there was a lot more money in my bank account. This was not really an issue during our marriage because I earned enough to cover her habit. But it would not surprise me if she now has at least one maxed out credit card. I would probably be ready for an early retirement today if I had not wasted 10 years funding that. Story 37. Did not get married younger, was 38. She was 36. Had our first child at 39 and 38. Had 4 kids. 2 are married, 2 are not. None at home, but we will be in our 70s before we see any grandkids. Probably will not see most of them graduate high school and definitely will not see any get married. I wish I would have gotten married no later than 25. Story 38. I do not regret sex. I regret the lack of compatibility with my wife regarding sex. I do not think I would have married anyone else from my dating history, but I did not really check my sexual compatibility with my wife. She checked all the boxes as a partner, and I assumed she would have the same level of desire as I do. I was wrong. She has a low libido and prefers conventional sex. I have a high libido and want to explore different sexual aspects. She only wants to do missionary sex, sometimes cowgirl, no oral sex, no doggy style, and no other kinks. Oral sex grosses her out. Everyone has their own preferences. I am just sharing my experience. Story 39. It's not exactly a regret because I love my life, but in an alternate reality, I wish I had started having children earlier and had more of them. I was very casual about saying, "Oh, men don't have a biological clock." But that is not true. Your biological clock is that you are going to die. I had a great time in my 20s and 30s, but I know that when I am older, I will be willing to give anything for more time alive with my son on earth. If you want children and you want to be a father, and if you have someone who wants it with you and you think you can make a life with, go for it. Do not wait. They are the best thing you will ever do. What are you waiting for? Story 40. I am 35 and have been married for 7 years, together for 10. The best advice is to live together first if you can. It helps you both experience how you are when you are not on. Also, understand that you are now in a 50-50 split with someone, and every choice either one of you makes will affect the other, even in the smallest ways. Be clear about what you want out of life, such as children or a house. We are expecting our first child in September and have wanted this for years. In essence, just be open and honest about your wants and needs with your partner. It is not always easy, but marriage is not always easy, and it is worth it in my opinion. Story 41. Divorced, communicate consistently and do not let it fall by the wayside. However, if you are trying and your partner ends up leaving for another man, it is not your fault. Story 42. Before getting married, make sure you know yourself, what you like, what you don't like, and what makes you happy. Knowing these things can help you establish proper boundaries that should never be crossed. I am recently divorced, and I believe it has a lot to do with neither of us having any boundaries in life, so we clung to each other too much. Learn to be fully independent before becoming dependent in any way. I married a woman skilled in manipulation, and I was under her control for years without realizing it. Lastly, always meet in the middle. It shouldn't always be what you want or what your partner wants. It should be middle ground where everyone wins in some way. Also, as others have said, be upfront about children before marriage. Do not be fooled by a good-looking partner. Story 43. The only thing I regret is thinking my mother would not cause drama with my wife. That is the only regret so far. It has made me set boundaries and stand up for myself. The only thing I would regret about marriage is going and thinking it will always be roses. However, I learned one valuable thing. It is easy to stand up for your wife, but doing it against your own family is tough. But I did it. Story 44. Not fighting enough about the little things. Yes, you read that right. Having a live and let live attitude is not a bad thing, but sooner or later there will be issues you disagree on that are too important to ignore. When that happens, you need experience in sitting down with your partner, listening, talking, and having a productive conversation that actually resolves things. My ex-wife tended to be selfish in the little things, and I just shrugged it off because of whatever. Yet I was sure that if there was ever a real issue that could potentially threaten our marriage, she would sit down with me and work through it. After all, that is what loved ones are supposed to do, right? Long story short, that was naive of me to assume. Story 45. I regret my naivety with it all. That I, an adult, could trust another adult to stay faithful to me and honor our vows. The vows said, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. I was naive to think she would take that as seriously as I did. But I guess those vows are more like guidelines. Now I'm stuck with another man raising my kids half of the time while I'm paying child support at a court-ordered rate that I cannot afford. I've used my 6-month emergency fund because of this. I'm back to square one financially. The point is marriage is wonderful, but divorce is expensive, and the law does not care about the outcome for the man. So choose your partner wisely and know yourself well before making that commitment. Story 46. Travel. See the world. Visit my parents' native country. When I was in my 20s, all I thought about was making money and advancing my career. Now I am married with a son and another on the way. We travel once a year, but the reality is when you have a young child, you are just babysitting in another country or different setting. I love my family. I really do. But self-indulgence is a rare commodity when you have one. Story 47. I regret putting the honeymoon on hold. We got married in September 2019 and had tickets and everything prepared for the trip to Japan the next spring. COVID-19 hit, and we were meant to leave about a week before Japan closed its borders. I foresaw what was coming and canceled our trip about 2 weeks before that. We ended up going to Japan in 2023, but by that time we had our 18-month-old daughter. It was a hard trip, very stressful. It was still meant to be the trip of a lifetime, and we did enjoy what we could, but we were exhausted when we got home. Do not ever put off your honeymoon. Story 48. Nothing. My wife is the best friend I could ever have. That being said, I did not settle. I was alone and unwell when I was single, but I knew settling for anyone who noticed me would result in catastrophe. If I had settled for anyone who gave me the time of day, I would have hated them eventually. Do not settle, gentlemen. It is not worth it, I promise you. Do not drink the ocean water when lost at sea. Story 49. I do not regret it, but I would definitely do things or events differently. If I knew how involved the mother-in-law would be, I would not have gotten married. Be sure to communicate with your spouse or partner. Do not be afraid of therapy sessions. Story 50. Make sure she works and earns close to or more than you do. Ensure she is also investing in her own retirement. I have seen many marriages where it becomes extremely beneficial for the wife to walk away. Alimony, child support, and half of everything you own, including your retirement, seem to really entice women to leave and pursue their own selfish desires. Make sure you both have a joint account and can keep each other accountable. Separate accounts lead to lies and deception from one party. I know a man who found out his wife racked up over $20,000 in debt. He helped her pay it off, but she did it again a few years later. He refused to help her this time, and she left him, taking half of everything he owned. Story 51. When getting married, I signed my wedding vows for love and promises. When getting divorced, I realized that the same piece of paper was actually a legal contract, which I signed without reading or understanding the small print terms and conditions. But she had read the terms and conditions, and for her, this was purely business with no emotion at all. My regret was signing a legal contract with someone who is financially incentivized to break it. The sisterhood encourages this behavior, so in my opinion, the more young men who know this, fully understand it, and take measures to protect themselves, the better. Let her try to take 2/3 of everything she sees and thinks you own, only to find out none of it is legally in your name, and she walks away empty-handed. A decent accountant and solicitor seem expensive at the time, but trust me, it's peanuts compared to the real threat. Story 52. Honestly, I only regret getting married young. We are still together after about 23 years, but I wish I had taken more time for myself. Story 53. Most of it. Views on money, views on chores, lack of communication, asking me to share what is bothering me, then getting upset and defensive when I explain it. Then she cried, and I ended up apologizing for having feelings. Losing contact with friends, losing time on hobbies, lack of sexual compatibility. Story 54. I wished we had moved out of Arkansas before starting a family. It is harder now that we have roots here. Story 55. I regret holding on to my emotional baggage from past relationships for so long. It really impacted the first few years of my marriage. Thank God my wife is understanding and loving. Story 56. Be happy and content with the person you are marrying now. They may change, but that is not something to rely on for the marriage to work out. Have the tough conversations and be honest with each other about the boundaries you are willing to compromise on and which ones you are not. Story 57. Compromise being required for a marriage to work is a lie. It leads to people staying with others while tolerating things they think are part of compromising, which slowly builds into a resentful relationship. Story 58. I wish we talked more about how to handle each other's aging parents and set expectations. While I don't have real issues with my in-laws, and my wife doesn't have real issues with my parents, we only briefly discussed at a high level what we would do to manage and set boundaries for each other. I'd like to get more detailed with topics like how we handle one of our parents teaching our kids something we don't want, or how we set boundaries on how often and how long in-laws visit, and what acceptable advance notice looks like. We don't fight about it, but we do get slightly annoyed at how we each handle our own parents. I'd love it if we just created a rule book and stuck to it. Story 59. The thing I regret most is not going to individual therapy much sooner to become my most healed and better self. Also, do not waste time working your dream job. Find a job with a good salary and time off. Life is much easier, and so are relationships when you are not worried about money. Story 60. I regret all the hurtful things I have said over the years. All the silly arguments blown out of proportion. The times I have been upset because of trivial reasons. We are coming up to our 20th wedding anniversary in August this year, and I am still very much in love with her. I think we have both grown a lot over time. Luckily, we have grown together. Story 61. It is not much of a regret. I never really had much of my own money. We got married when I was 21, and I was not working full-time until we were months away from the wedding. We have a joint account, and I do treat myself occasionally, but it was not a situation where I could have said, I want this. I am getting it now, on something like a gaming console or something worth several $100s. Now, it is about making wise financial choices. Story 62. Being abandoned by my wife and having to be the sole disciplinarian of our children was difficult. She became their best friend, and I had to be the bad guy. I almost left several times. Story 63. Having a son with her. I love my child, but I could have waited to find someone more kind and sincere in being a parent. She wanted children for her own selfish reasons, and I missed that. Had I divorced her when she proposed this 17 years into marriage, I would have walked away free to live life on my own terms. Instead, she bankrupted me just to fight to keep our son out of harm's way and in my life. Story 64. I never spent time in complete debauchery in Thailand. It was not a big deal, just something I would have definitely done if I had the means back then. Story 65. Marrying a straightforward narcissist with narcissistic children damaged my mental health. I was dragged through the mud with false accusations in legal settings. My character was repeatedly attacked in front of my family and on social media. Story 66. Traveling when you are younger is easier. In your 40s, your knees and eyes start to deteriorate. At 50, hip problems and urinary issues may occur. Story 67. Not discussing our values and expectations beforehand led to irreconcilable differences about raising children. Her parents were abusive, and I assumed she would not want to raise our children in the same way. However, she behaved poorly, and in her view, my not supporting her on punishments was unforgivable. She is my ex now, and although the children are grown, they are not in good condition. I still blame myself. Story 68. Giving my children cell phones at age 10 takes too much of their energy. I do not agree to my ex-partner's request for anal sex. Story 69. I'm not married but old enough to see what other married men regret after marriage. From my experience, the number one thing that men regret after marriage is marrying a mentally immature woman. You have kids, a mortgage, and are providing for the family, and she just had an emotional realization that a 16-year-old could have, so she's going to change all of that for everyone, and she does not even understand how impactful that might be. It usually happens when she is poor but attractive and married for the thrill of having a lot of money, or out of necessity. This happens all the time. That being said, happy loving couples also happen all the time. Roll the dice. Story 70. When they say comparison is the thief of joy, it is not just about what they have versus what you have. It is also about not comparing what you do versus what they do. Do not keep a scoreboard on every action you take and inaction they take. If you feel like you are doing the dishes more often, talk about switching who does the dishes. Do not tell your spouse that you do the dishes more and thus it is unfair while they are doing some other activity, even if it is another chore. Talk about changing chores and responsibilities, and explore each other's feelings about specific actions you take. Keeping the scoreboard builds resentment, and you will not be happy. Just do not keep a scoreboard. Story 71. I actually have 0 things I would call a regret. But the question was for the young men, so here is my advice after 20 years of an amazing marriage. 1. You have to look after yourself so you can look after her. Keeping healthy is not optional. Love is an investment. The more you give, the more you get in return. Being a good husband is a learned skill. Be open to hearing new ideas and be willing to attend couples therapy. Money is not important. I have wealthy friends, and their wives became more focused on material gain as the years passed. A person who ended a relationship with a wealthy partner seems unable to find love again, based on the cases I have seen. The challenges of raising children, especially in the early years, are totally worth it. The toddler years were really hard, but they prepared me for life. Children are incredible. By the way, screens are harmful. My teenagers do not have phones. Other parents often comment on how nice and respectable my boys are. Story 72. I would say make sure you marry someone who loves you as much as you love them and who puts as much effort into the relationship as you do. If you have had to beg someone to date you or you are in a one-sided relationship, please reconsider any marriage plans you may have. If you do not, you will probably regret it for the rest of your life. Nothing you do will ever make them treat you better. Story 73. I regret not making it clearer that I was the captain of the ship. I think everyone is familiar with teenagers acting up and pushing boundaries until you put your foot down. In many cases, wives are the same way. I had kind of an "I'm not that bothered about it. If she thinks that's important, then fine" attitude about many things. At the end of the marriage, I realized that she never really cared about most of those things. She was actually trying to provoke me into showing her where the line was, and I should have done that much earlier. Story 74. I was nearly married for a few years, living together and engaged. Women often talk negatively about men taking their unresolved maternal issues out on their wives. They are not wrong, but they do the same. I am not sure if it is paternal issues, maternal issues, or just general trauma that we all have, but you will be an emotional catcher's mitt for her, and she for you. If you love each other, it will be easily navigable, or you will quickly learn otherwise. Best wishes, friend. Love is a beautiful thing, and I hope you get the best out of it. Story 75. Nothing for me really, but for those who seem to turn a blind eye when thinking about getting married, make sure you are receiving back what you are putting in from your partner and vice versa. I see too many posts where one was hoping things would improve with marriage. If you are having many disagreements or arguments with your partner, then you are no longer compatible. Please do not think that getting married will change that. Story 76. I wish I had the knowledge to make the career moves I made only because my wife made me move to a different town. I wish I had not been convinced to buy into a timeshare. I wish I had realized I was actually better off single because I dislike children, and the level of neediness my wife exhibits makes me regularly frustrated. I cannot engage in my hobbies because I have to spend every waking minute with her. I am also the only one who cleans the house, does the dishes, and does the laundry. I love her deeply, but I am not happy. I feel like a slave, and my life is not my own. Story 77. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret not exploring my sexuality and sexual urges more when I was single. Story 78. There are things I have said purely from frustration that I did not mean and wish I had not. I went from being single and having plenty of time and money for my hobbies to not having any spare time or money to do them. I was not ready to lose my sense of self. Being the breadwinner for your spouse and children and feeling the stress of the world on your chest is hard. It is difficult not to let the stress show, and it can easily make your partner feel like you are not happy anymore and suddenly you are not the same person. This is partly true, but I would not give any of them up for anything, and I would do it again. Story 79. In today's world, proper and healthy communication is at an all-time low. Everything that someone notes here for the guys needs to start with communication. Above wants and needs in life, boundaries, goals, children, and sex. If there is no proper communication on the topic, do not take the next step. This will impact you like a truck in life, repeatedly. Story 80. You take care of your wife and children the best you can so that they do not worry about basic needs. Your wife now feels she deserves better. The reality is she has been influenced by social media, Korean dramas, and a group of single friends. Every little act may spark a quarrel, and I am walking on eggshells every day. I am contemplating divorce now. My best advice is to stay single, as marriage may not be worth it in this day and age. Story 81. Getting in-laws. My mother-in-law is a narcissistic monster. Marriage and grandchildren became additional tools she could use to manipulate my wife. Story 82. Losing myself creates a huge challenge. Eventually, you decide it is time to grow up and start working towards who you think others want you to be. However, the old you will come out, so make sure they love you for who you are to begin with instead of who they think you are capable of being. Story 83. Not managing finances properly. Still have not. It is very complex when we have multiple mortgages and other financial matters to handle. My wife works in finance and it is still difficult. Story 84. Extremely beneficial, for example, when you have $2 million of properties and they want it. Try starting again and again. Story 85. My only regret is not having left our country sooner. It would be great to have had kids already in the country where we wanted to raise them, as it would be much easier for them to learn the language and culture. It would also mean less disorder for us. If you were getting married and considering relocating, I would make that one of your top priorities if you can. If you are both 40 and want children, then having children should be your top priority immediately. Story 86. Not having established a shared way of speaking about sex and sexual needs is something we need to develop now that our children have arrived. It is not as easy to find the time and energy to care for our sex life. Story 87. I wouldn't change a thing. I am happily married and have a beautiful wife. We go out all the time on vacation and always remain like best friends. Story 88. Getting married. After 22 years, my wife has filed for divorce. Since we are married, she gets half my pension as well as half of everything else. If we were not married, she would not be able to access it. She filed for divorce, but it is likely she will actually receive 75% of everything, as she has made no provision for herself in her retirement. We have no children, and she did not give up a career. I have worked hard to support her as a good husband should, and now I have to accept this unfair situation. Do not get married. Story 89. Marrying the wrong person because it was the next natural progression of our relationship was a mistake. It was such a relief watching that woman leave my house in a moving truck heading back to her parents' house. It was a bad relationship from the beginning, but I was young and too naive to recognize the red flags for what they were. Story 90. Happily married but wish I had been with more women before it. I should have said yes to all the opportunities. Story 91. If you have doubts, act on them. You only get one chance at life. Being with the wrong woman can literally shorten your life. Story 92. Mom and her sister said that my Uncle Gary was a menopause baby. It was 1945. They were in high school and along came a new baby. I was born 5 years after him, so it was like I had an older brother. He was the son that Grandpa had longed for, and in later years, he became a support for my mother when, at 55, my father left her for a 26-year-old. I was an only child who never married, and Uncle Gary was my rock. He advised me on real estate, career choices, and called most Saturday mornings, sometimes at 5 a.m. because he would forget the time difference. His last phone call was 3 years ago, just a day before he died. His voice was strained, and he said, "Look after yourself." He pleaded with me to stay in the house I currently own because it was a good deal, and it would cost me to sell and relocate. I miss him every day. Story 93. Not having deeper conversations about sex. You need good open conversation in general. Also, do your part and don't sit back. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.